Technological innovations are changing the insurance sector, on one side facilitating the rise of novel risks, and on the other offering new opportunities for the actors in the industry as well as for regulation and supervisory activities. Andres Lehtmets is a rapporteur for the Task Force on InsurTech at the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority EIOPA. In this podcast, he discusses the current and future trends in terms of the evolution of FinTech in the field of insurance, both in the EU and beyond. This podcast was recorded at the European University Institute in Florence, Italy, in November 2019, in the occasion of the Autumn School on FinTech, organized by the Florence School of Banking and Finance. Andres Lehtmets, thank you very much for being here with us in Florence for this course on FinTech and regulation of FinTech. And you're a rapporteur for the Task Force on InsurTech at EIOPA, the European Insurance, Occupational and Pensions Authority. So from your point of view, how is FinTech changing the insurance sector these days?
First of all, thank you, and it's been a pleasure actually to attend the course, and it's been 3 days full of very interesting and inspiring discussions. To actually come to your question, first of all, it's important that data is actually the raw material for insurance undertakings. They have always used data and data analytics to inform underwriting decisions, also to price policies, settle claims, but also for detection, of course. But what has actually changed is the availability of data. So we have more and more data available, social media data, Internet of Things, for example, flood risk maps, also the different variables, but also open government data, for example. Maybe another aspect to mention is that also the capacity to store data has increased and multiplied. Cloud computing, of course, here, but also powerful IT processors and more accurate algorithms, AI, of course. And all of these developments, of course, have impact to the whole insurance value chain and of course, pension sector as well. Quite often, these developments are done together with startups or in cooperation with technology companies. Business models are changing. Maybe to go more practical, then, of course, the product design and development phase is one aspect where we can see the change, for example, different pay-as-you-go products, so which basically take into account your actual behavior. Car black boxes, for example, where you can collect the exact data, how you drive, what's your behavior, and of course do more precise pricing based on that. Of course, it makes the price for some consumers maybe cheaper, but others there can be a situation of financial exclusion, so of course there are risks and benefits. Parametric insurance, another topic to point out based on different blockchain solutions. But also, of course, if you look at the sales and distribution part, the most innovation are the different distribution channels, 24/7 access through your mobile phones and so on. But also underwriting and pricing, of course, where you can do more precise pricing and underwriting. And I think these are maybe the main things to highlight.
Yeah, and with respect to all those innovations that you just highlighted, is financial regulation able to keep pace with the new opportunities and possible with the new challenges that those innovations bring along?
As a supervisors, we of course look both the opportunities but also the new emerging risks. And the aim is of course to take these risks and benefits into account and to strike a balance between enhancing financial innovation but also ensuring a well-functioning consumer protection but also financial stability. So for that, of course, first the level playing field is very important, but also the technological neutrality. More concretely, I maybe highlight 3 areas or topics which are related to regulation, but also practical supervision, where maybe further work might be needed.
Yep.
First of all, the fragmentation of the insurance value chain. What we see is the increasing complexity in how insurance is being manufactured and distributed, of course. Also the new kind of distributors and new products, which I have already mentioned before, and maybe one key challenge is the emergence of different platforms or even like digital ecosystems, and also the big tech companies, Amazon, Google, so on, who are also significantly disrupting existing manufacturing and also the distribution side, of course. And what we also see is the growing complexity of the outsourcing, which can lead to the concentration risk, but also operational risks that might not always be so apparent. And this can be, of course, good and bad for consumers and to the market. And what is important is that actually these risks are identified and properly managed, actually. Related to this complexity, maybe the another topic to highlight is the digital distribution and disclosure part. So again, it's related to this emerging complexity, but insurance or actually financial services in general are very complex. For consumers, it making the understanding, of course, very difficult. What are the products? What are the futures of the products? What are the risks? It's especially important in the digital environment, of course. So the proper disclosure and financial advice is crucial based on the, of course, the assessment of the consumer's demands, the needs. If you look at the current regulations, so of course, in a way, it's technology neutral, but it was also mainly designed in the area of offline world in mind. So consequently, I think we can ask whether we need a fresh and out-of-the-box view for a proper consumer-centric digital distribution, but also disclosures, and to focus, in addition to what information is provided to the consumers, also how this information is provided. And just briefly, maybe the third topic to highlight is the emergence of data oligopolies or monopolies, or we can also call it somehow the access rights. So, for example, if you look at GDPR, it already recognized that the consumer is the owner of his data, which is the core principle in the GDPR. GDPR also states the right to take your data and to go to another provider with your data, so the data portability. However, the current regulation established by data moving rules, this might not be actually sufficient to prevent the emergence of data oligopolies, because to the platform economy ecosystems, but also the Internet of Things developments, so the connected cars, health wearables. So in this sense, the 30 days which the GDPR states that you should have the access to your data, and maybe also if you have it in the PDF format, this is not exactly what is feasible. I think in the near future we should actually have the discussion around open insurance, so similar discussion as it is already seen in the banking side. And from EIOPA's perspective, we look further, of course, of these topics, and I think it's really crucial to put first the consumers in the center of the debate, but also the European values.
And exactly picking up on this point, what are the activities that EIOPA is conducting in this field and that you are conducting in the task force on InsurTech?
In EIOPA, we have created this InsurTech task force composed of different experts in consumer protection, financial stability, IT, but also policy. And the idea is to be better equipped and understand the implications of the innovation and what are the implications for the whole sector. And if you look maybe the last year, then most of our activities was based on the European Commission Action Plan on FinTech. We were looking, for example, the licensing requirements, principle of proportionality, how this is actually applied in the InsurTech context or broadly innovation context. We also looked at innovation facilitators together with our colleagues from EBA and from ESMA. Also, we explored the need for cloud outsourcing guidelines, but also to maybe mention, we, for example, monitored the evaluation of the crypto assets and the implication for insurance. And this wasn't part of the Commission FinTech Action Plan, but our own initiative, we were conducting the thematic review on big data to understand what is the real situation in the market. And maybe to come to this year, the focus has been more on the same, what I mentioned, the fragmentation of the insurance value chain, also the new business models, but also the work on cloud sourcing guidelines to provide some clarity for the market. And I mentioned the big data thematic review. So more concretely, as a follow-up, we have set up a consultative expert group on digital ethics in insurance, and the group will basically assist us in the development of the principles of digital responsibility in insurance. The broader objective is to enhance the trust of the use of new business models, data sources, but also technologies, and to set up some kind of non-binding principles of digital responsibility. I mentioned the European values, but the principles should also somehow recognize the important role that insurance play in general in the economy, but also in society in general, and to also reflect the principle of solidarity, which characterizes the insurance sector. More concretely, we looked at the fairness and non-discrimination, including, for example, data biases and fairness around the use of different price optimization practices, but also transparency and explainability, and also governance side. I think this is probably what we are doing under the InsurTech task force, but in addition to that, we also look, of course, the cyber insurance related topics and ICT security, but this is another working group.
Yeah, and speaking about the innovations in technology, obviously you mentioned that there's opportunities for the consumers and for the industry, but also for regulation and supervisory activities, which are collectively known as RegTech and subtech. Could you provide a snapshot of the situation today and maybe some practical examples of how the new tools can be used to support those areas of work?
Mm-hmm. Sure, of course, these technological innovations, they are having a significant impact to the insurance sector. We discussed it already, but also for supervisors. So supervisors not only need to supervise the use of these new technologies and techniques, but also they can benefit from them by themselves. And a couple of good examples are maybe, for example, machine learning, but also natural language processing, which indeed may not be so new, but the improvement of computing power, they somehow make them more available and more common in use. And indeed, several supervisors are developing different subtech solutions, although as we see it at the moment, most of them are still in the project phase. Of course, not every project will make to the production stage, actually. And again, from practical side, some of the most maybe advanced authorities around the world, they are exploring some interesting tools, for example, for data quality and reporting, but also I think anti-money laundering is one very important part where we see a lot of developments, but of course you can use this, for example, to improve your data visualization practices and so on. From EIOPA's perspective, we have just set up a working group on subtech to look more in depth at these developments. This is a little bit work in progress, of course.
And moving on now to the future, to wrap up also this discussion, what are, in your opinion, the trends that we will observe in terms of evolution of FinTech in the field of insurance, even outside the EU?
Predicting the future is of course very hard, and
for sure.
However, as you referred, if we look at both the EU but also beyond, what we see is the general rapid growth of digital ecosystems and platforms, and of course the importance of these platforms and ecosystems in the insurance field is also increasing. Again, for us as supervisors, it's crucial to understand how the platforms and ecosystems will shift the value and change the nature of the risk. I think one crucial aspect we should keep in mind that these players have a capability to actually scale up really fast. So even if we are not seeing this development so much in Europe at the moment, we should keep this in mind. If you look sectors, then maybe the innovation around the mobility and also the health sectors, for example, the gig economy developments and the increased use of different health wearables. Mm-hmm. These are likely to have the biggest impact on insurance in the future, providing, for example, on-demand products, but also different preventive services, for example.
Okay, so final question. You've been attending this course for now 3 days, and obviously also spoke as a dinner speaker. So what's, in your opinion, one key takeaway that you would like to highlight for both the participants to this course as well as to the listeners of this podcast?
Mm-hmm. One key takeaway. Let's talk with each other, actually. Why? Because technology will, of course, continue to evolve, and in response, the insurers and the insurance intermediaries, they continue to develop and revise their business models, and of course, this can bring both the beneficial innovation, but also new risks. And if we are looking from the supervisory perspective, then good supervision has to be forward-looking.
Sure.
And also intrusive. This includes actually asking difficult questions, and in order to make supervision more efficient and to actually ask these questions, we need to better understand what are these new technologies, what are these new business models or strategies, and what risks they contain, and whether these business models are they sustainable in the longer term, actually. But good supervision has to be also proactive. It is important to participate in the broader policy debate related to innovation and digitalization, and in general, both in EU level, but also to continue to engage with the supervisors also outside of the insurance sector. So maybe to mention here the competition, of course, related directly to all this platformization thing, but also data protection, which is again really connected to the innovation. But of course, it's also important to have the ongoing dialogue with all the stakeholders, so consumers, academia, startups, incumbent companies. So yeah, let's talk with each other.
And that's a very good suggestion to close this podcast. So thank you very much for your time and for your answers.
Thank you for having listened to this podcast by the Florence School of Banking and Finance. For more information and to listen to all our podcasts, visit the webpage fbf.eui.eu/podcasts.